So this right here is the staples. I did it. I went out and I bought staples. Look at that. I don't even know if that's in frame. If it isn't, I don't know. Hey there guys, and welcome your faces back to Camera Basics. Today is episode 2, and in today's episode we're going to be talking more about the technical skills and the settings that you'll need to know if you wish to improve your photography. Last time we spoke about the basic settings about your camera and how you can use your camera when you switch it from auto over to manual. If you wish to check that out, it'll either be here or there, I don't know where it is, but it'll be somewhere. And I hope since you've checked out that video, you've been playing around with your camera settings and you know the gist or the basics about your camera and its settings. Because today we're going to go a lot more in depth and discuss the settings that you'll need to know if you wish to take your photography to the next level. But enough chit chat, let's get right into it. So now we'll move on to the first thing, which is shooting in RAW. Now if you're just getting into photography, you've probably heard of this word a lot. But what is RAW? Well, just like JPEG, RAW is a file format. However, unlike JPEG, RAW ensures the maximum quality of your images and will capture a lot of information within your photograph, as well as capturing more vivid colors. And this gives you tons of freedom in post to work with and really allows you to take your photo editing game to the next level. RAW also captures information within the highlights as well as the shadows and actually preserves the information within them so that when you're on post, you can pull back the highlights and the shadows, resulting in you saving any images that you thought would have been lost, ruined, or unusable. How cool is RAW? However, because of this, RAW files are thus a lot bigger, but they are much better to work with in post. And on top of this, they ensure that you're capturing the highest quality images possible when you're out shooting. Within your camera, you are presented with two options of RAW: compressed or uncompressed. Compressed RAW files are smaller and more compressed. Uncompressed RAW files are not. But be warned that if you want to shoot uncompressed RAW files, they are going to be a lot bigger and will take up more space on your SD card. And in my personal opinion, compressed RAW files are actually perfect and they'll suit your needs perfectly. So if you wish to set your camera to RAW, simply go into your camera settings, under file format, and there'll be a drop down there that you can click and select RAW. Like I said, compressed or uncompressed is up to you and depends on which option you want. You can shoot RAW and JPEG. Don't really know why I'd want to do that, because for me JPEG images are just a waste of time. So just aim to shoot RAW. I shoot all my photographs just compressed RAW as it is, and it's been perfect for me and my workflow. Be warned that if you do shoot RAW files, however, the only way to open them is through like Photoshop, Camera Raw, or Lightroom, unless there are other software that I'm unaware of, but you can't just preview them very quickly like you can a JPEG. And it's literally that easy. This simple step can really improve your photo game and ensure that you're capturing high quality photos and ensure that you're able to work with a lot of information within post, allowing you to get better photo edits. Now the next setting we'll be talking about is auto versus manual focus. Now I know what you're thinking, Josh, how is it possible for our caveman brains to focus the camera better than AI infused technology that has been mastered over the years? Well, let me explain. Autofocus generally works out great, and if you're just getting into photography, you've probably only ever shot on autofocus. And in fact, if you're anything like I was, you're actually scared to shoot on manual focus because I found it quite intimidating. But let me explain how autofocus works and why it's quite easy to switch it over to manual focus. Autofocus will generally work out great, and in fact, it will focus on the eyes or the face of a human subject, and even if you've got some top-line cameras, they will focus on animal eyes and animal faces. However, if you've got an older model camera, it actually uses focus points within your image, and you can see these focus points by looking through the viewfinder of your camera, and you'll generally see them. Now, what these focus points will look for is well-lit objects or even things in the foreground. And this works out great if your subject is well-lit and easily identifiable. Some cameras, like my Sony a7 III, will use a focus square that you can see on your camera's LCD, and you can move this around within your image and set the focus anywhere you would like. However, if you are shooting through thick foreground objects such as water, glass, or leaves, you should use manual focus. Or even in an incident where your subject is just too dark for your camera's autofocus to pick them up. And this is especially evident when you're shooting long exposure at night and it's dark and you can't see your subject, but you know that when that long exposure is done, you'll perfectly be able to see your subject. But when setting it up, it's going to be hard for your camera to autofocus on that subject. Thus, for long exposure, I always recommend that you use manual focus. So how do you use manual focus? Well, it actually is a lot easier than you think. Once you've switched your camera from auto to manual focus, either within the camera's settings under the focus section, or you can use one of the programmable buttons on your camera like I have to switch focus modes. But once this is done, the main way you'll be controlling what is in and what is not in focus within your image will be the focus ring on your camera's lens. Simply rotate the ring either left or right and you'll see certain elements within your image begin to come in of and out of focus. And these areas that are in focus are normally displayed in red on your camera's LCD. Now, depending on what f-stop you use will determine how many areas are covered in red within your image. In the previous episode, we spoke about f-stop, and what that means is that the lower the f-stop number, the less amount of your image is in focus. And these mean less areas within your image will be covered in red. If you're shooting a portrait and you're using a low f-stop, only the eyes or the nose will actually be in focus, therefore only the eyes and the nose will be covered in red. If you're using a high f-stop like f11, f12, and you've got a very wide shot, a lot of your image will be covered in red as a lot of your image will be in focus. The Sony cameras even go as far as to zoom into your specific focus area so that you can set the best focus possible. Now, don't move around a lot once you have set your manual focus, because once your focus is set, it is set. Your focus is set this far away from your camera. And if you move your camera back, that focus is going to move with it. So if you've set your subject here and you move your camera away, the focus is going to move off your subject. So if you're moving around a lot, be prepared to set your manual focus a lot or just use autofocus if you can. So we just said the word focus a lot in these past few minutes, and I really hope you're not confused as we move into the next setting. And now we move on to the final setting that you will need to know, and that is shooting modes. Now, if you've been playing around with your camera, you'll notice that it actually has a variety of shooting modes. These being your standard single shot, which captures one image every time you click that shutter. So it's more like just a. And then you have high firing, which captures multiple images as you hold down that shutter, and it will actually continue to capture images at a rapid rate as you hold down that shutter. So that's more like a, and it's just continuously going and capturing images. The next shooting mode is timer. And what this means is that your camera will set a timer, and when that timer counts down to the end, it will then capture the image. You click the shutter, it will then count down, and then at the end, capture the image. And this actually goes well with another shooting mode, which is where your camera captures 3 photographs when you click the shutter. And these 3 photographs vary. One will be overexposed, one will be underexposed, and one will be exposed perfectly as you set it. But I'll explain a bit more on that later. So what are the different shooting modes and when should you use them? Well, single shot, as stated prior, captures one image every time you click the shutter. And this is great for any situation where your subject is still and controlled, such as landscapes, portrait, or beauty, somewhere where you have control over the situation and you don't need to rapidly capture that shot as there isn't that much actually changing. High firing captures multiple images at once. As you're holding down the shutter, it's just rapidly capturing images. And this is great for run and gun shooting, such as street, sport, or action photography. Somewhere where your subject is moving around a lot is happening, and you need to get that shot quickly, and you've got one opportunity to grab it, and you need to rapidly capture multiple images to make sure you can get that shot. But be careful with this though, and don't be too trigger happy and firing off multiple high firings, as will this result in your SD card becoming full very quickly, and then you'll have to go through thousands of photos in post that will generally look very similar. The timer is pretty much self-explanatory. And what this means is that you choose between 10 or 5 seconds respectively, and when you click the shutter, your camera will count down from those seconds and then capture your shot. And this is great when you want to take photographs of yourself and no one is around to capture it, or when you are shooting long exposure and you don't want you pressing the shutter to move the camera, thus ruining your long exposure. I've had this happen to me before, and when I click that shutter, the camera actually moves and ruins my light trails and ruins my long exposure. Setting a timer ensures that when you click the shutter, the camera actually waits, becomes perfectly still, and then starts capturing a long exposure. And this is great to ensure you get a maximum quality image that is still and firm. Finally, we arrive at the setting that I spoke about earlier, which is where your camera actually captures 3 photographs when you click the shutter. One of these images will be underexposed, one overexposed, and one perfectly exposed as you set it. And this is a very niche shooting mode, and it's often used by landscape photographers when they want to capture the perfect shot exactly how they want it. And shooting 3 photographs at once ensures that they capture the perfect shot with perfectly exposed highlights, perfectly exposed shadows, and a generally all-around great image that they can then merge together in Photoshop. Now this setting is actually coupled with shooting with a timer, as when landscape photographers are capturing their shot, they don't want them clicking the shutter to move the frame slightly and thus ruining their shot. So they set a timer to ensure that their camera is perfectly still when capturing the shot so they can get the right frame that they want. If you want to use any of these shooting modes, simply go into your camera settings, go to shoot mode/drive, then under drive mode you can click there and select any one of the shooting modes you'd like to use. Or you can be like me and just set it to one of the programmable buttons on your camera so you can instantly get access to it whenever you need it. And with that guys, we have covered all of the technical skills and tricks that you can use to improve your photography. Doing these won't automatically make you a better photographer, but it will allow you to hone your craft and get the technical settings down so you don't have to worry about that and can just focus on creating art and the content that you wish to create. Honestly, the best thing you can do now is just play and experiment. Fiddle around with these settings, test the waters, and see how these settings work and how you can incorporate them within your shooting style. Getting these settings down is great, and once you've done them, it is done, and when you're out and about, you can just focus on grabbing that shot. But that is all for today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned a thing or two about your camera and how these cool settings can work. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I will be reading them and letting you know what I think. Please like if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this. Subscribe if you enjoy my face and seeing all of my weird videos. But with that, guys, I hope it's been a good one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.